Hi, I'm Tom Luna. I'm a former school board member. I was privileged to serve as senior advisor to U.S. Secretary of Education Rod Page. I also had the honor of serving for 8 years as Idaho State Superintendent of Public Instruction. During that time, I also served as president of the Council of Chief State School Officers. One thing I have learned in all these experiences is that educating children is not rocket science, it's more complicated. On my podcast, Swimming Upstream, we will visit with courageous leaders who challenge the prevailing tide and inspire all of us to swim against the current. Let's jump in. Welcome to another episode of Swimming Upstream. I'm your host, Tom Luna, and this is our opportunity to visit with education leaders from across the country that are making a difference in their state and in their communities to help education and schools meet the needs of more students and help put those students on a path towards success. And our guest today is Stephen Dackin, who is the Ohio Department of Education and Workforce Director. And Steve, thanks for being on the show. Thanks for spending time to talk to us about Ohio and the great things going on in your state. But again, thank you for being here.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me. This is a great opportunity. And I've been a big fan of your work, Tom, over the years. And so I'm fortunate to be part of this.
Well, and we want to talk about the things that you've accomplished there. I want to share a little bit of your bio, and you can definitely add more if I miss any important things. But over 40 years of experience in education and leadership roles in K-12 and higher education, a lot of focus on instructional leadership and workforce readiness and education policy. And when we were talking before, and I hope we get into this, the way that you've melded these together, that they can't operate separately and accomplish the good work that needs to be done. And I also want to spend a little bit of time talking about your work in Reynoldsburg City Schools. That was a national leader in many things, including STEM programs and some of the reform efforts that you led there. But Steve, first off, talk to us a little bit about what inspired you to pursue your career in education.
Well, Tom, it's really interesting. I was the first one in my family to go to college. And really, if I am brutally honest, I went to college because I wanted to continue to play sports. I was an athlete in high school and had the good fortune to be able to go to college and play college athletics. And that was really the driver. My parents didn't really drive me to go to higher ed. But once I got there, it was kind of like a light bulb went on. And I thought, I'd really like to do something where I can help kids. And of course, my mental motto was always coaches. And I always felt like coaches were actually, the good coaches were always good teachers. And so that kind of burned a mental motto in my mind about, well, that's what I want to do. And so I ended up going into education, majored in social studies and graduated from undergrad and went right into the teaching profession, and I went right into coaching as well. And so I taught for, I think it was 8 years. And it just always dawned on me as a teacher that, I could take care of my kids in front of me. And I love being a teacher. But I always kind of took a step back and said, I'm not every kid is getting what they need. And so maybe I need to think about, can I make a bigger impact? And that's when I decided to go into administration. And my first administrative job was assistant high school principal. And then I did the AD thing. Then I did the principal thing. And then I moved from Lima, Ohio, down to Columbus and was high school principal in Reynoldsburg. I was there for 5.5 years, and then went to the Department of Education at the time and oversaw our school improvement work. And that's when I got exposed to a whole lot of things around the country that people are doing. I remember the 90-90-90 schools and learning lessons there from these are schools that were 90% impoverished, 90% minority, and yet scored 90% or higher on state assessments.
Yeah, I know exactly. Yeah.
And I learned a lot from there. Right. And so So then I went back to a district, Westerville City, oversaw the 3 high schools, 4 middle schools, and then was asked to come back to Reynoldsburg as part of a succession plan for the superintendent who was in place at the time. And he left a lot earlier than I anticipated. But I inherited a good district, but felt like we needed to be better because we were rapidly changing as a district in terms of low economic, socioeconomic status, minority. During my time period there, we became a majority district. And most of our kids, about 70% of our kids were on free reduced lunch at the time. And we had just changed a lot. We were the fastest changing suburb in the Columbus region. And yet we were the second lowest per pupil expenditure district in Reynoldsburg, and yet we continued to get A's and B's on the report card. And people were fascinated by that, that you could change that much demographically and socioeconomically, and yet you still maintain your student outcomes. So I really enjoyed that a lot. And then
talk to us a little bit about one specific thing, and that is the focus on STEM education, because I think as we talked here on this podcast, that I think that'll lead into a larger discussion on workforce and workforce development. But talk about because you became a national leader, your district, when it came to STEM education at a district level and right. Getting it into a K-12 approach.
Yeah. I guess, I always kind of tried to look down the road a little bit and see what's coming. I think, good leaders can help establish a vision for what can be. And to me, it was very clear that we needed to graduate kids who were critical thinkers, who understood, kind of the plan, do, study, act kind of approach to things. And so we really introduced it in our early grades. We introduced it as a pedagogical approach. It wasn't necessarily about the content right then. It was more about getting kids to think a certain way, and getting our teachers to think about how they could rethink instruction. And then as they matriculated into middle school and high school, and then, the foundation was laid around, building those skills around critical thinking. And then we started introducing the content. But that was also coincided with a couple other things we were doing at the time. And that is, I had a 2,000 student high school that we wanted to make smaller. And so we were fortunate to have a bond issue pass. And so we got a chance to build a second high school building, but I didn't want a second comprehensive high school. I wanted academies. So we went to 4 academies, 2 of which were STEM based. And then we went open enrollment as a district. So we accepted kids from other schools into our district. And then we created schools of choice in our district. Because I really believe in parent efficacy. And give parents choices that tend to work out a little bit better. They have more ownership in it. And so all this was a kind of a comprehensive set of school reforms designed to accomplish the same thing. And that is that we would have graduates who were immediately prepared for the workforce and or to go pursue additional training or higher education. In fact, we even had a little bit of a mini graduation ceremony at the end of 10th grade, because our kids had to declare their post-secondary intent, and then put them into a series of pathways. And that was pretty novel back then that we were doing that. But we just want to try to get focused for kids, not to create a career necessarily in high school, but to be thinking about
great relevance.
I mean, it is relevance, and it's really about efficacy for students. Helping them say, so what do you see in your future? What would you like to be? And then our job is to meet them where they are, what they declare, and wrap the curriculum around that. That was really our STEM focus. And of course, we had pathways, specific pathways related to STEM. We created kind of some environmental STEM pathways as well. And it really went well. I mean, our kids, if you'd have told me that I could have converted a 2,000 student high school into 4 academies and STEM K through 12 and open enrollment and all these other things, and I would have got any complaints from our community, I'd have bet you a lot of money on that one.
Yeah.
I sort of lost that, but honestly, we had zero complaints.
Talk to us about that. What's the role of the business community or the parents and all of that? Because you mentioned something earlier that I think is not said enough, and that is how choice can increase parental involvement in their child's education. Those are, you hear that often, that parental involvement is lacking and it's critical. And your point that when parents choose their child's education, they tend to be more involved. They want to make their choice the right choice, and they're and so they're going to be more involved. But talk about how you got the business community and the community at large to support these choices, including or support these changes you made, including the choice that was expanded for parents.
Yeah, so it was really done through a community engagement strategy that we called at the time Reynoldsburg Reach, where we would go out to the community. I think we had, and this was all done in 60 to 90 days, but we probably had, I want to say 25 to 30 actual physical touches in our community between a series of town meetings, surveys, focus groups, et cetera. We're gathering a whole lot of data around what parents and others in our community wanted from their graduates. Some people use the concept of portrait of the graduate today to kind of do some of those things. That wasn't around when we were doing it. We just knew that we had to figure out what parents and our stakeholders really wanted out of our graduates. And we heard a lot. And so we gave them some questions about, okay, like the notion of 2 comprehensive high schools versus 4 academies or 9-10 building, 11-12 building, or any other construct. We wanted to help educate our community about what could be, as we're contemplating 2 high schools, and educate them, and then get the feedback from them what they would prefer. Same thing with the schools of choice in the elementary and middle school level. So it was a pretty rugged process. I mean, it was very time-consuming, labor-intensive. We had an outside organization come in and facilitate it on our behalf. But we learned a ton, and it's the right thing.
You can't shortcut that stuff. You can't shortcut that, going out into the community, making sure they're well aware. You can get a bond passed, you can get a school built, but when you start making those changes down at the family level, and anyways, you can't shortcut that.
Well, and the other thing we wanted these changes to outlast me.
Yeah,
right? That's one of the challenges in many of our districts across the country, is that a superintendent comes in, they initiate reforms, it's going pretty well, and then the superintendent leaves and the reforms fall apart.
Yeah,
and I wanted to create an infrastructure in the community that would be less likely if I left, kind of thing. And again, I don't want to say this is all me. I mean, I had a tremendous groundswell of support by faculty, administration, parent groups, etc. So, because our community was essentially a bedroom community. And I kept saying, we want to be different by design. That was our mantra, different by design, because our community was a low wealth community. We could not afford some of the things that some of our neighborhood or neighboring communities could. So we had to be different. We had to offer something to our community that says, if you come to Reynoldsburg, you're going to get this high quality education, and we're going to customize that educational experience for your child. And it was a kind of a different by design, framework.
Yeah. Let's shift gears a bit now. Talk about your current role, and I want to start by again just addressing your title, the Director of the Ohio Department of Education and Workforce. That is a new role that Ohio has in the way that they're directing their education, and I believe maybe unique to the country. But talk about the conversations and the reason that led to Ohio making this recent change in and creating the title and the role that you have when it comes to education and workforce.
Yeah, I do think, Tom, it is unique in the country. And the genesis was that I served on we have a state board of education in Ohio that had 8 gubernatorial appointees and 11 elected members. So a 19-member board. And then a state superintendent of public instruction. Both of those are constitutionally mandated in Ohio. And however, in the Constitution, it said the duties and responsibilities of the state board and the state superintendent of public instruction are the purview of the General Assembly. And so there was some growing kind of dissatisfaction in the legislature about the responsiveness of the Department of Education, the old Department of Education and the state board. And so they decided to, actually came from the Senate. Senate in the first year of the biennium ushered out Senate Bill 1, which was the change in the government structure in Ohio. And so it went through several iterations, hearings, et cetera. It ended up becoming part of the House Bill 33 biennium budget process. And so it changed the governance. So we still have a state board of education. We still have a state superintendent of public instruction, but their responsibilities are targeted to teacher or licensure in our state, teacher principal licensure, territorial transfer, and then professional conduct. All other duties and responsibilities related to education are under the purview of the Department of Education and Workforce. The key there was the addition of workforce.
Yes.
Because the legislature and the governor have been laser focused on making sure. Let me back up. Ohio, CNBC rates Ohio the 7th best place to do business. And we've been attracting some real heavy hitters, Intel, and some of these other really important opportunities for economic development and prosperity in Ohio through attracting good businesses. But the number one challenge for us as a state, because we have a declining population, is workforce. The employers are asking the question, where am I going to find my talent? And so we know that K-12 has not always been necessarily receptive or saw as their mission to prepare the next workforce. And so it was very intentional that they put workforce in our title. So we now have that responsibility, and we're in the middle of a biennium budget right now. So we have an executive budget that we dropped about a month ago that has a ton of policy and appropriation responsibilities around workforce, and we're glad of that. And by the way, that we're not just K-12; we also extend out into adult learners. And adult learners who do not
including higher ed?
Doesn't include higher ed. Higher ed, we have a separate agency for higher education. But for all those who do not enter higher ed, we have a responsibility to see to what extent we can, kind of create the connections out there post-secondary for them to get the kind of training they need to get. And in fact, we've got a really interesting super pilot right now that we use with ESSER funds to go after kids who never went to college. And figure out how to find them, because that's one of the biggest challenges. So we're working on that as well.
There's many paths to a career, and it's not always traditional higher ed. It may be pursuing a certificate or licensure through a community college or other path, like you mentioned. And that's the ones that you focus on are those that are that you can pursue outside of a community college or higher ed, but still their licensure and their skills that are marketable and valuable.
Well, let me be clear. We also are working with our K-12 districts on pathways that do go to higher ed. It's just that we stop it after high school, and then our Ohio Department of Higher Education kind of takes the mantle from that point on. But for those who don't go to college, we're working with Jobs and Family Services, our Department of Development, the Office of Workforce Transformation, ODHE. We're working with all these players out there, including our business community, to figure out how we capture that group. Because there's a stat in Ohio that's probably replicated across the country. If you take an incoming graduation class, so let's take the class of 2018, which is our most recent 10-year cohort, or not 10-year cohort, a 6-year cohort. We got about 138,000 kids who enter high school for the first time. If you fast forward 10 years later, 68% of those kids who entered high school as a freshman never get a 2 or 4 year degree. And my guess is that's pretty similar with many states.
So, I think so.
Right. And so that's a problem for us as a state that's got declining population. Baby boomers are aging out of the workforce. We have a declining birth rate. We have to have people who are able to work. We have to have them work. That's the issue. And so hence the urgency around workforce.
When you look at, you spent some time in higher ed, I think you said in a community college and stuff. Talk about what more K-12 and grade 13 looks like, and what more can be done there to help with that transition from one to the other.
I think that you said a key point there, transition, because that's where we lose a lot of people. Many of our high schools talk about how many kids say they're going to college, but that's not hard data. We do have hard data now in Ohio who actually those kids who actually do go to college, those kids who actually do complete. And so part of it is that I saw at the community college. And what was interesting about community college, Columbus State Community College, where I spent 8 years after my Reynoldsburg superintendency, is a very large community college. Serve close to 20,000 students. I got that wrong. Close to 40,000 students. And what I learned there in my role, my job was to go out and work with K-12, higher ed, employers to build out these pathways to in-demand, high-wage jobs and careers, starting in high school. And what I learned is that the ecosystem doesn't play. Not everybody plays well in the sandbox, and we need all these. From adult OTCs, adult Ohio technical centers for adult ed, community colleges, tech colleges, 4 years. We need them all to play together in order to, because it's for us that 68% translates into 93,000 kids a year who we don't know what they're doing. We don't know what skill set they have. So part of it is that K-12 has a huge responsibility in this space, because most of our kids who leave us never get any labor market data while they're in school. They don't know what good jobs are. Right. We've conducted a series of focus groups with kids who've graduated in the last 3 years. We have this super pilot where we're reaching out to kids between 18 and 25 who didn't go to college. And we learned a lot from them. We learned that the only information they basically got when they were in high school about their options after high school, military or college. That was the overriding narrative. It didn't matter if you were in an affluent school district or you were in a low-end district with a high percentage of low-income students. The narrative was the same. So we're not giving information to kids and their parents early in their high school career. So part of our governor and in our executive budget, we're asking the legislature to require every student to have a career plan that's linked to they're already required to have a graduation plan. So this would be integrated into their graduation plan. But the key to this piece, first of all, it starts in middle school. But we also believe this has to be a set of regional partnerships that come together and provide kind of that adult mentoring that needs to happen. And it's just not about adult mentors simply giving advice on career planning. It's a bigger picture about hope and aspiration and helping them guide, kind of like being that true mentor, guide them to get to where they want to go. And we just think that is so important. A lot of states have career plans, but they're typically in many respects check the box, for a school district. And this can't be check the box. This has to be real. It has to be based on students' aspirations, but they need to know what they want to do. And then we can give them information about the opportunities that exist for them to be able to do what they want to do.
Oftentimes, I got a couple more questions, but this one, oftentimes, you have these aspirations and goals and even expectations, but the state may have an accountability plan or a funding formula that isn't aligned with those aspirational goals. And at the district level, the funding formula and the accountability system trumps everything, right? That's what's going to drive your decision making. You mentioned some things working through the legislature. How are those things being addressed in aligning, state accountability plans, funding formulas, and other things that the states expect and measure, right? And with the vision that you've laid out.
Yeah, well, let me start with accountability first. So we have a measure, college, career, military, and workforce readiness measure that's been on our report card for the last 2 years as a reported item. That is to say, we give districts their data on how well their students are meeting the 11 components of this measure. And the components range everything from scoring remediation free, on an ACT or SAT, to 250 hours of work-based learning, an apprenticeship, internship. I mean, all these other work-based learning opportunities that we want kids to experience more of, and industry recognized credential attainment. We have College Credit Plus in our state, which is basically allows kids to take college credit free while they're in K-12, as long as they qualify. And then advanced placement, all that. So we have a very extensive list of eligibility requirements there. And so we're working with the legislature now to get that rated on the report card. So it becomes part of the weight of the report card. And I think it's absolutely critical because we've on our state assessment world, we've eliminated all but 2 tests that are not required for the feds. In other words, we maintain all our federal required testing, but we've eliminated all the other tests with the exception of 2, which are at the high school. It's American history, American government. But even those 2 are required for graduation.
Yeah.
And so what we want to do is make sure that we have a true measure as best we can, because this is hard to measure, as you all know. But a measure that gets us started on whether or not we're making any difference on skill attainment and knowledge attainment as kids are coming out. And is it aligned to the needs of the workforce? So we have we've had a program in place now for, I think, 4 years. I could be wrong about that. It incentivizes districts monetarily to ensure kids get credentials of value while they're in high school. And it's a pathway to graduation. So you accumulate X number of points, you earn certain credentials, it applies for credit toward graduation. We've doubled the number of kids from last year earning these industry recognized credentials. We're going to revisit our list because not all credentials are equal. And we do that with the business community in our Office of Workforce Transformation. So that's a big thing we're changing as well. We're going to elevate work-based learning as a foundational component of meeting graduation standards. So it kind of elevates the importance. We're going to add weighted grades to our career technical assurance guideline courses. So if you're taking a career tech course, you can get a weighted grade just like AP or IB or College Credit Plus. Again. And the big goal here is to take career technical education to kids. Ohio has a number of pretty high performing career technical education centers, but not every kid can get in. And no, we shouldn't have wait lists. The legislature invested $300 million last biennium to expand career tech facilities and expand the opportunity for districts to acquire career technical equipment. $100 million for equipment, $200 million for facilities. I would argue this: Ohio has really good policy. We have some of the best dual enrollment policy in the country. We have guidelines to assure transfer of credit, not just articulated credit, but transcripted credit.
Yeah, there you go.
And so the universities have to accept it. In Ohio. So our challenge is like a lot of states, and maybe Idaho is a little bit like this. We're a home rule state, so yes. Local school districts. We have 611 public school districts. 728 chartered non-publics, which include community schools, charter schools, as well as non-publics. And then I forget the exact number off the top of my head of independent schools, which are non-chartered, non-public. So we have a plethora of governance structures out there who all have their own authority to determine curriculum in their districts. That's why the science of reading, when I mentioned the science of reading that Governor DeWine championed early on, was a big deal for Ohio, because we don't mandate curriculum in Ohio to our locals. But this was such a crisis piece for us that we said, we got to do something now. And we know more about how the brain works today than we ever have. The science is finalized for right now. We know what works. We're going to do it.
Yeah. Perfect. Well, listen, Steve, we really appreciate you spending time, and we could go on, because there's a lot of questions I would still have, and I've learned a lot just visiting with you about the things you've done in the past, your 40 years involvement in education, and then the great work you're doing in your new role as the director of the Ohio Department of Education and Workforce. It's going to be interesting to see how that plays out, and maybe the incentive it is for other states to consider combining the departments of education and workforce efforts. They do definitely need to work together better than they currently are. And but one thing we like to do, Steve, before we let you go, and that is we always ask our guests to share one piece of trivia about their state, so Ohio, that most of us would not know.
Well, I shared with you some trivia before the broadcast, but that's not the trivia that's important. So here's a bit of trivia, and I thought about this, and I'm a social studies major, and so I took a lot of Ohio history when I was a kid. So this is a little known fact: Superman, the concept of Superman, was created in 1933. By two students, high school students in Cleveland, and I'm trying to remember their names. I think it was Jerry Siegel, and Joe Schuster. Yeah, Jerry Siegel and Joe Schuster, high school students who created this image of Superman, and it emerged from Cleveland High School in 1933. How's that trivia?
That's one of the more unique ones that I think everybody knows Superman, and everybody has grown up with that. And so that's fascinating. Is that one of the questions on the state assessment in Ohio then, is you have to know?
Unfortunately, it is not. And maybe this is an opportunity now that all mankind knows about this, because I know you have lots of listeners. So maybe it needs to show up now in one of our assessments.
Yeah, wonderful. Well, folks, we've been visiting with Stephen Dankins, who is like I said, the director of the Ohio Department of Education and Workforce. And Steve, thanks for being on Swimming Upstream, and thanks for all the great work you're doing in Ohio, the example you're setting for education leaders across the country. Thanks for being our guest.
Well, Tom, it's been my pleasure. I really appreciate the opportunity, and continued good luck on the podcast.
Thank you. All right. Hey, well done. Well done.
Well, thanks. Yeah. I didn't get to our innovation waiver. I should have got to that, but because that's pretty unique. It allows our high schools to forego the Carnegie unit, for example.
Oh, really?
Yeah. We it used to be. It's in law. It's in statute where a district can apply to the department to waive statute and or rule. And we're working with 15 school districts in the Dayton area to actually help them write the waiver, as opposed to them writing it and giving it to us, and then we say yay or nay. We're helping them write the waiver so they're going to get it. And it's everything from competency-based education in lieu of the Carnegie unit. We also have the policy on the books of flex credit, so you can award credit based on experiential learning. We have a number of those policies already in place, and now all we got to do is convince people the high school's got to change.
Yeah,
right? And I've been working with Carnegie Foundation and XQ Institute a little bit around that effort, and we're going to attack the high school next.
So seat time is not the measure, right? That's what you're saying. It's more a proficiency based. You demonstrate what you know and what you can do, and you can move at your pace.
That's right.
And you have 15 districts that are actually piloting this.
Yeah, pilot. Yeah, we're working with them to approve the waiver to pilot it. Yeah.
And will each of these districts have their own unique plan that they've created?
Yeah. No, we don't do one size fits all here.
Yeah. So this would be an opportunity to visit more about those specifically as once they get their waivers approved, and they kind of talk about some of the different approaches that they're taking. And I think that'd be very interesting to learn about. When do they anticipate these districts will implement a new plan?
So we're actually targeting some of the early work at the beginning of next school year, because we're working with them now to develop their plan. Depends how quickly they develop the plan, to be honest. Because part of this, I believe, going back to the conversation we had earlier, you got to engage your community in this. This isn't, it'd be really hard to do this without the approval of your community, so to speak. You got to make the case for it.
Yeah. Everybody wants change. Well, I kind of say it this way. Everybody wants to go to heaven, but nobody wants to die to get there. Right. Change is something that we resist.
I love that phrase. Can I quote you on that?
There you go. You bet.
Lunaism.
That's the teaser for the podcast release right there.
There you go. Well, hey, great seeing you. Are you going to be in DC? I think it is in a couple of weeks at the CCSSO meeting.
I don't know, because we're in the middle of budget season, and I just got done testifying in the House the last 2 weeks, and it depends when it gets to the Senate, because I'm going to have to testify in there too. So I've been and the governor is doing a State of the State speech March 12th. So my calendar is crazy. So I won't.
Yeah, I think that's the week of DC, right? Is that March? 12th week. I think it's like So, well, if you're there, I'd love to see you there. And
absolutely.
And again, thanks so much. And very inspiring. I appreciate the work you're doing there. And it's good to see, those good things happening.
Well, I'm humbled. I'm humbled when it comes from somebody of your background and experiences that you've done. So you swam upstream pretty hard in Iowa.
Idaho.
Oh, I mean, Idaho, God.
And that happens often. And I thought one time I actually said Iowa when I was talking to you during the interview, but I'm sure I said Ohio. But at one time I thought in my mind, did I say Iowa?
My deputy director is from Iowa. That's why Iowa pops up every once in a while.
Yeah. All right, cool. Hey, thanks a lot. Have a great day. Have a good weekend.
You too. Take care.
Thank you, Director.
Thanks.
Great episode, Tom.
Yeah, that went a bit long, but I almost was going to tell you, hey, let's capture what he's saying about these innovation schools, and we'll make this a bonus if people want to stick around. But we'll just get them on again after they get those things rolling.
That sounds great. Thank you, Tom. Have a good weekend.
Thanks. Have a good weekend.
You too. Bye-bye.
Bye. Thank you for listening. And remember, our children may only be 22% of our population, but they represent 100% of our future. If you found this conversation valuable, subscribe to our YouTube channel and find us on your favorite podcast platform. Swimming Upstream is part of the Strategos Podcast Network. To view the entire lineup of our shows, visit our website, strategosgroup.com.